The second way in which humility manifests itself in our life is to sit in the silence that silences us. I am referring here to contemplative prayer and meditation, which I'll be speaking of in a later session at some length. But for now, to say simply that at the heart of all meditation and all contemplative prayer is that of an interior stance of silence. I was once attending a Christian Zen retreat in which the person leading the retreat stated that there are 3 levels of silence. There is first imposed silence, that is the silence that results from people not being allowed to speak. Secondly, and more deeply, there's chosen silence, to choose to be silent. And deeper still, there is eternal silence. Thomas Merton once said, "We sometimes tend to think we're real because we make noise. That's why we tend to think the more noise we make, the more real we are. But we should never forget that all of our words arise from eternal silence and are very quickly going to return to it." Thomas Merton once shared in a sermon that he gave in chapter room to the community that he was always humbled whenever he was asked to speak in that room, because everything said in that room should arise out of silence. And the fruit of that word should be to deepen the silence of all who listen. This deep, attentive receptivity to the ineffable mystery that is the very heart of all that is real, the very heart of all that we really are. And so the very essence of meditation and contemplative prayer always has about it the quality of this silence. It's not simply the silence of not speaking. As a matter of fact, we might be speaking in our practice. We might be reading the scriptures. We might be saying prayers. But the underlying stance that the words embody is the stance of opening ourselves to greater receptivity or greater listening to God. Now, in committing ourselves to this interior silence, we immediately come up against our poverty in silence. That is, we experienced fairly early on, actually, how inept we are at this deep attentiveness. There was a retreat I was leading, in which there was a Jesuit priest. He shared with me that he often leads his retreats by telling the retreatants, "Be here now, for if you're not here now, you're in trouble." And out of the dialogue came the awareness that not being here now is the way we tend to be here now, that we're more or less here. This is why we meditate. This is why we pray, to deepen the capacity to be genuinely present. And the paradoxical nature of prayer and meditation is not that the intention to pray and meditate immediately delivers us from our poverty and silence. Quite to the contrary, prayer and meditation brings us directly to the experience of our poverty in silence. We might say, in fact, that those who pray are not those who know how to pray, but those who are willing to be humbled at ever deeper levels of the realization that they do not know how to pray. Once a man came to me asking for guidelines in meditation practice, and I asked him if he had any previous experience of meditation, and he said yes, he did. He tried it once, but he wasn't very good at it, so he stopped. Not being very good at it is the point, in that meditation brings us directly to the humbling realization of our poverty in stillness. There is a verse from the Psalms that reads, "Be still and know that I am God." How are we to understand this verse in the light of our reflections here? We might say, first of all, that being silent on purpose is just esoteric noise. That is, if I sit proving to myself how silent I can be, my silence is in fact my ego's noise. If I sit very still in meditation, sitting still on purpose is just the ego's esoteric footwork, proving to itself just how poised, how still, how motionless it can sit. Thomas Merton once said, "The more elastic an ego we have, the more respectable an ego it is. It can even stretch out to nothingness and snap back to put another score on the chalkboard. I reached nothingness," as if nothingness was the attainment that one acquired. I once had someone come to me for spiritual direction, and the person started out by saying, "I don't think I'll ever be poor enough." And she started crying as she said it. And I thought to myself, what are you going to do, wake up some morning poor enough? Like say to yourself, I never thought I'd make it, but by God I did it, I got poor enough. Isn't it true that not being poor enough's poor enough? Meditation practice brings us to the direct realization that we're poor enough, not as something attained, but as the very real limitations in our ability to do something as fundamental, as foundational, as be simply present, open, and awake in the present moment.